Welcome to another episode of the Holistic Sister Circle. Today we have Briana with us, and she empowers people to self heal unscripted through life's kerfuffles without modern medicine effects using personalized natural solutions rooted in Chinese medicine. Founder of Live by the Earth, she helps others opt out of the closed loop system and opt into their healing superpowers. Off duty, she's homesteading, homeschooling, and adventuring around the Appalachia with family and friends, doing her best to live in rhythm with nature and in purpose. Brianna, I'm so grateful to have you here. This is going to be so much fun. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and share.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, before we get started, tell me a little bit about how you actually got started in, you're homeschooling, you're homesteading, you are saving lives. Like, where did all this start?
Oh gosh, I have so I grew up uh as first generation American, and so there's a lot of herbal and traditional background in my world from my grandmother and my mom. My sister's a chiropractor. So on one side of my family was very natural oriented, even though I was first generation American, and I still used antibiotics, I still, used standard America, but there was always herbs in the background. There was always like, try this first and then. So that was always there for me. And then as I watched on the other half of my family, my dad and my stepmother had Parkinson's, and she had a very hard time with that. She was on a cocktail of medications. And then another family member that I tend to keep private because he's private, but he was also a Ritalin kid in the 90s and then put on a cocktail of medication after medication, and then was diagnosed bipolar and lived in residential facilities. And so they lived very much in accordance with whatever modern medicine was going to give you, that they would reach for that. And I saw the big difference in that. And in that whole scope of things, my stepmother had Parkinson's. She's no longer here, but my mom was diagnosed with MS the same year that my stepmother was. And I saw them take two totally different paths. And my stepmother had like, she ran the gamut with Western medicine, had 5 brain surgeries. Like, it was really intense, her lifestyle and the way she lived. And I saw how destructive it was for, I mean, the whole family. Like, our family is kind of decimated in that sense. Like, it just really snowballed. But then I saw my mom, and she lives alone, and she's, struggling, but she took everything in more of a natural world. And so she was able to function better and be more in tune with her rhythms, even though she did still do modern medicine in some things. She created for herself a more interdependent relationship with modern medicine instead of a codependent relationship with modern medicine. And so I was really able to see that, and that inspired me to go to the next level and to get into acupuncture school. And, the rest is history. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was
That was good.
no, I said thank you so much for sharing what you mean by change our lives and what happens behind the scenes and how we actually do it with the effects of our I how to get started on your path. And one thing that really stood out to me too is when you talk about how your mom lived more of a holistic lifestyle when she was struggling. And can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I'm really intrigued. If this is a meditative lifestyle, right? She wouldn't have to struggle. So I would love to know like what your perspective is on that and what you feel like about that.
The last question I couldn't hear. What was was that last question? There you go.
Do you feel like propaganda has anything to do with that?
Oh, yes, for sure. In the 1990s, they started pushing the commercials, the pharmaceutical commercials, and we are actually, New Zealand and America are the only two countries that put pharmaceutical companies, pharmaceutical commercials on air. And so that's what they started direct to consumer in the 90s. And that's when the Ritalin kids, that's when my brother was a Ritalin kid. And um, yeah, I mean, the doctors get paid for what they prescribe and they get bonuses. And so there is a big push to um, to get just kind of keep people in the system. That's just from, I mean, my experience, my personal experience, my professional experience. You see people in the system between, big pharma, big agriculture, and big government, and now big tech, and it's like all this system. So it was a very interesting journey to watch the both of them go through their idiopathic. They don't know what caused it. My stepmother's was caused by her. She used to, DDT, and she used to run after the trucks in Texas when they sprayed it because they were so hot. So the kids would run after the DDT spraying trucks. And so she would run after that all the time when she was little. And she grew up near a lead painting for cars. She grew up like down the street from a lead paint facility. So you can really see how our environment plays that role. And then, but regardless of what's happening outside of us, it's really about this environment in here. And if we can get this environment right in here, it's like our house, right? If we've had everything that we've ever had since we've been born in our house and we've never cleaned it, what is it going to look like? It's going to look insane. It's going to be cluttered. It's going to be hoarded. There's going to be pestilence. And so it's really going through the process, which is definitely not always easy, but it's definitely worth it, of cleaning house inside, cleaning our temple. And then, whatever happens outside of us, we have a better terrain to operate from.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful example as well. What are some things that you've either done with with yourself or with your clients to actually help them clean their temple? Like, what does that process even look like?
So everybody is different, right? So we know that everybody's different, bioindividuality. In Chinese medicine, there are the five elements that we operate from. So five elements of nature, what happens outside of us happens within us. So we don't do like diagnosis and things like that as far as how modern medicine does it. I look at the labels for identifying data, and then translate it into Chinese medicine and the patterns. And so everybody is bio-individual. But when we look at the core level of the thousands and thousands and thousands of labels out there, it really has to do with our microbiome and our guts, and how clean our blood is and how clean our guts are. And so part of that process is getting to know each person's individual element, whether they are more fire and hot in nature and temperamental, or there's a balance and an imbalance, right? So if somebody's fiery and temperamental, we know they have a lot of heat in their body because heat rises in nature, right? Or people are really cold in nature. And so if somebody's really cold in nature, they need something that's warming. If someone's really hot in nature, they don't need that hot, spicy food. They need cooling foods. So it's like an interesting dynamic to understand where the person's constitution at, where their element is at. We all have the five elements, but there's one that's more specific, and then there's like a chief and a deputy. And so once I find out a little bit more about their patterns and what's happening, then we can better assess how we start the process. And so a lot of times, just like you have that house with everything in it, you're going in and you're going to find a room to clean. And so it's about cleaning, but making sure that things are open first, like the drainage pathways, making sure that that's open first, because most people's drainage pathways are not open. And so if we are trying to heal something and help something get better and feel higher and better, and somebody is not draining, then it's going to keep recirculating and redumping back in their body. So making sure that, we check in their elements and see what their constitution's at, what foods are good for their constitution, and then there ends up being like this plan of action depending on what their patterns are presenting with.
This is such a great analogy, and I do believe that people who are listening, that this would really resonate with them as well. When it comes to the data that you look for, what, like, can you share a little bit more about like the actual data itself? So someone comes to you, for example, and they have an issue, or maybe they want to, get a cleaning, right? Um, what do you do? What's the first step?
Yeah, great question. So I actually do tongue mapping calls. So what I like to do, and if anyone wants a tongue mapping call, it's available. But I
Can
like
we
to
do
do,
it? Can we do it
yeah,
on here?
yeah. I got to see your tongue up close to
Okay.
the camera.
When you finish talking, we'll do it.
Yeah. But the tongue mapping, then I can kind of see what's happening in your tongue, on your tongue, and I can share with you what's happening. And I don't like to know what's happening with people when they come see me, when I talk to them. I'm just like, let me see your tongue. That's where we start. And then I get an idea. Then I'll run down like a list of things that I think are happening for themselves, their bodies. And then they'll tell me yay or nay. And then we'll get kind of more into it. We'll probably like schedule another call and get more into things. We'll take it from there.
Okay. This
Yeah.
is really interesting. All right, I'm going to show you my I'm going to show you my tongue.
Yeah. Show everybody your tongue.
Okay, here we go.
All right. I got to see it. Okay. Let's see. So I see that it is pale and you need a little bit more oomph in your life. I see, okay, you can stick it back in and I'm going to look at it again. So I see that it's pale, and I would be curious about your periods. I would be curious about your hormones and whether or not like um, they're flowing well, whether you have enough like blood in your system, like whether they're light periods, if you get headaches. I think you have trouble sleeping, a restless sleeper, like light sleeper, not like deep sleeper, tired, fatigued. Let's see it again. Okay. Yeah. All right. You can stick it back in. I would digestive stuff happening there, right? So, and I would also be curious if you have things happening up here in your body, like chest and up. Like, I don't know if you get an anxiousness or sighing or just like a lot of stuff up here. And so, yeah.
Okay. Let me share this with you, because
Okay.
you're spot on, which is so cool. There's this book that I have. Oh my gosh. It is somewhere in here. But it talks about reading of the face. So you can do like
Uh-huh.
face readings, you could do tongue, eyes. So I'm like, this is super interesting. Okay, so what you've said so far, um after my miscarriage, I have started having very weird periods. So they come, but the way that they come is not the same. It's not how it used to be, essentially, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that from a digestive standpoint, yes, certain things in my diet have also changed. I find myself not eating as much, or not even really having an appetite. I find myself drinking a lot more fluids and really focusing on that instead of a lot of foods.
Mm-hmm.
I also find myself, when you talked about like stuff going on like up here, more so in the chest area. Sometimes I do like tend to feel, kind of around the breast area and things like that. Um, and then I would also say from a sleepless night perspective, I'm a very light sleeper and I also grind my teeth.
Hmm. Yeah.
Now, I did go to a dentist for that and they recommended that I get a mouth guard. I'm like, well, that doesn't solve my problem. That just puts a band-aid over it. So how do we get to the root? And when I was thinking about it, I said, well, I've had braces before. So it could be a possibility that my teeth have shifted. That could be a possibility. I don't know what it is, but that's like my next step. So yeah, you were spot on. Which I found is so interesting. So what
That's
do I do
awesome.
now? What do I do now, doctor? What do I do
All
now?
right. All right. I would say, so I had a couple of things happening there for me. So I'm glad that I was spot on. Phew. And yeah, so I would really, I don't know if you do eat meat or not, but bone broth is going to be super nourishing for you. And using that medicinally is going to be awesome. And when you make your bone broth, you know, make it with organic bones and stuff like that, and then you put apple cider vinegar in it to pull the marrow from the bones, and then that would really nourish your insides. Because if you're not eating a lot, you definitely still need to be supported and nourished, like at that deep essence level, especially
Yeah,
after a miscarriage, right? So, because
yeah,
you really need to, your body needs some blood and chi. Like you need, like when you go and to the meat counter, do you? So if you look at your tongue in the mirror later, um, you know, when you look at that, that wouldn't be a piece of meat that you'd want to buy, right? Because like,
dang. Okay, so
right?
from me, so I do eat meat. I
Hmm.
was vegan for 2 years.
Hmm.
And during that process, toward like the end of my cycle of being vegan, I was having more issues.
Hmm.
And I had went to a practitioner. She actually owned like a herbal store and she also did readings while she was there. And she was like, well, what is your blood type? And I said, well, I'm blood type O. And she was like, oh, honey, you don't need to be a vegetarian or a vegan. Like, you need to eat meat. And I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't know anything about blood type at the
Hmm.
time. So after working with her, I was like, oh, no wonder I'm so weak and fragile and I can barely like lift a weight because I
Right.
was super thin, but I was so fragile, like I couldn't do anything. So I started eating meat again, and I actually started using companies like online where we get really fresh like meats and stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
And majority of the meats that I do eat is beef, so I do eat beef. But I will say that um even with that though, I still don't think I eat enough. Like I just think I'm malnourished, to be honest with you. You
It
know?
is. It is showing up in your tongue that way. When, you know,
Yeah.
when it's pale and like it just needs oomph. It like when you go to get that meat counter, like you want it to be plump and red and no coating, right? And so your coating is, I can't tell if it's like thicker or thinner, and because like it's so pale with the tongue, right? So like, but you want like a thin white coating is okay, you know, but so yeah, so we look, you know, the nourishing that bone broth is going to be super valuable for you, and you can make it from meat, you know, the meat bones. We get, actually, we go to this local chop shop and we get all their bones, and then my husband takes it and then makes meat from it. So he buys the bones from the local store, and then
Oh.
mhm,
It's
yeah,
really interesting. Actually use like kettle and fire bone broth.
yeah, yeah,
I love their broths. So
yeah,
shout out to
yeah.
Kettle and Fire.
I've had their broths too. Like if
Yeah.
I'm out and about and I just really need something, you know, nourishing. Yeah. So, and then yeah, uh, vegans and vegetarians are some of the most unhealthy people I have treated. And I used to be vegetarian too, so I get that. I don't, you know, have an answer for the ethics of all of that, but I know that I can appreciate the food cycle, and I'm understanding, like my logic understands that, so I go to that. and use food like Eastern nutrition is totally different than Western nutrition. Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, this is amazing. I hope you all are like really catching on to this because I will say I've had my tongue read once, like years ago, I think when I first started like my journey. So this is really exciting to see how it's, being read
Uh-huh.
now after a few years. So definitely if you want a tongue reading and to learn a little bit more about your body, Brianna's your girl. So I'll definitely hook you up. Now, before we close out, I would love to know from you, how people can connect with you further. What does that process look like? And yeah, tell us. How do we get
Yeah.
in touch with you?
Yeah. So I have my website, livebytheearth.com, and I have a Facebook group, and it's called Your Road to Health Freedom. And I'm very active in there, more so than my group on Facebook, than my like Live by the Earth Facebook thing, my business
Okay.
page. So I'm very active in my groups. And so my Live by the Earth website is really, I guess, like a hub, and then my Facebook group. Um, I am on TikTok and Instagram, but I've been really kind of honing in on Facebook these days. So, and yeah, I do tongue mapping calls, which are they're not linked in my website, but I have a link that I could give you for
Okay.
hook up with
Yeah, that would be perfect. And I can add it to the description notes of the
that.
episode. So if anybody wants a tongue reading from you, that would be great. And before we wrap up, can you just share with us too, what's one piece of advice, like just practical advice that anybody can take away for their next step? So say, for example, maybe it's not necessarily tongue reading right away. Maybe they're a little nervous and a little freaked out.
Mhm.
They don't
I
want to like step in that, right away. So what would be like a practical step that you would recommend?
A practical step to what in particular? To sorry.
No, that's okay. Just a practical step to them finding out more about like their health or if they feel like they, need a tune up or maybe they haven't, like we talked about, cleaned their temple in a while. Like what would you say would be like their next step?
I would definitely connect with more natural healthcare providers and seeking what is happening with the body, because when people are in a position where they're not feeling good, a lot of or imbalanced or whatever or tune up, a lot of their thing is to like reach for synthetics or we're kind of trained like that. So what can you use you know with your body, and what can you use in your kitchen are like the first things I think of. And so the retraining of the brain is really key. And so I know that that is not the most practical in the sense of um, something easily tangible to reach for, but the easy thing I think is to just bring awareness to what you're reaching for, and can you make a different choice, a better choice, or a more natural choice if it's not natural. Like, can you interrupt that pattern? And I think that pattern interrupt is really important as a practical step.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And we're so grateful that you were able to bless us with your presence today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun talking with you and looking at your tongue.
Of course.